Hey guys, so today what we're going to be doing is reproducing the iconic Converse All-Star logo that you find on the PF flyers on the high tops that Chuck Taylor makes. And essentially we're just doing that, and we're going to put our own sort of custom text inside of it. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that the text that I used has a few more letters than the phrase Chuck or Converse All-Star, and so therefore my text is a little bit smaller and doesn't take up quite as much space, and therefore some of the proportions are a little bit different, and obviously the dashed lines aren't quite the same. But it's essentially we're going to be learning a couple different things as far as putting our text on a closed path, and then sort of establishing how we create this little outline here and a few other things here or there. So let's go ahead and make a new document here, and anytime. I'm just going to choose any square document just so you can kind of sort of tell where things are. And I'm going to go ahead and start off by making a circle on my artboard. Let me find my tool here, ellipse tool, and I'll just hold down Shift, make a circle. And what we'll do is we'll just pull this into the center of the artboard here. Okay, so with our text tool selected, just tap T on the keyboard. Remember, if we hover over a closed path, it automatically fills up the path with text. But if we hold down Alt while we click on the closed path, it puts the text around it. Now I'm going to go ahead and just sort of center this, and I'll just press centered, and it's going to sort of put this in the center. It's going to center it up on a certain line that we choose, and I'll just fill this in with any old text that you want. Now in this case, if you have like a club that you're a part of, if you have a team that you like, if you have maybe a video game crew that you roll with, whatever it is you want to put on here, you can put on here, and I'm just going to put in all caps Academy for Classical Education. Now obviously right now it's on the bottom, so I'm just going to grab my move tool, and there's a little vertical line here that you can grab that will rotate the text around your path, and you can just sort of make it snap to the top little button there. And so if I were to continue typing here, it would still keep it centered. Academy for Classical Education, where teachers can teach. If I wanted to fill that up, and so it stays even on the center there, but I'll just keep it Academy for Classical Education. So now, if you want to find a blocky sort of serif font like this, you can. I dare say there are some imitation fonts out there that you can use, but on your computer, I'm not sure if you have anything that might fit, but if you do, look around for it. I use this font here called Varsity Regular. So let me just go change it to Varsity Regular here. If you don't have this font, you can choose a different font. Let me see if I can find a different font here. Let's look. I think Black Cloak might work. It's a bit wide though. Maybe Georgia would work. Century might work. Insofar as that goes, it's not quite as thick. Here's Cooper Black, or Cooper Standard rather. There's a Cooper Black. It's a little bit darker. So you can see the different weights to our fonts here. Let's see. I'm trying to think of fonts that you have on your computer that might do. Keep on Truck is one I downloaded here. Mesquite, I don't know if that's on your computer or not. Nervous is the one I downloaded here. Poplar, no, it's not a serif font. Let me just see here. Stencil. If Stencil might work for this particular logo, that might work as well. Sunrise is the one I downloaded here. I'm trying to find a thick font here. Varsity Regular, I'm using right now. And right, okay, so there's a couple of options you've got. Stencil might be the one that most approximate what you're looking for, but if you have a different font that you want to put on, then you can. I'm going to stick with my Varsity Regular font here. It would involve me signing into your computer, so let me just go ahead and I'll just choose that. Now, in this case, Varsity Regular has an interesting kind of thing where, like, if you type in all caps, it'll have this little stencil kind of shape here. Right, so if I were to just take off caps lock and type Academy for Classical Education, it wouldn't have that. It wouldn't have that little stencil shape to it. I might make this just a bit bigger here. Is that a bold? I don't think. I'll just make it bigger here. Okay, so there's Academy for Classical Education, and what we'll do is we will make another circle. And I'm going to grab my circle tool here. I'm going to start in the center, and I'm just going to work my way out. Hold down Alt to start from the center, hold down Shift. And I want this text to appear, to sort of go to the top of the text that we already made. So let me just go ahead and get the fill off. Right. And so we want to see the path go over the top of the text. We want it just to abut that text, right? We want it to be on there. And so once again, we'll get our text tool and we'll hold down Alt and we'll just click on the path itself. And oops, let me just get my text tool here. Hold down Alt and click on the path. Now, already you can see that it's hanging out on the outside, and so it's sort of on top of the text here. But essentially what we want to do is we can go to Type and then click on Type on a Path and then Type on a Path Options and just hit Flip like that, and then it'll flip up onto the other side. So once again, make sure it's centered, and we can say, I'll just put Macon, comma, GA. And what we'll do is we'll get our move tool and once again manipulate this little line here to drag it around to the bottom like so. Now, in this case, we've got a lot of text up here and we've got a little bit of text down here. And so what we're looking at is kind of a lack of balance. So if I want to balance this out, I don't want to make this any bigger because I want this sort of inner circle to be kind of completed by virtue of the closure. If I wanted to maybe even I could add like Georgia if I wanted to. But I'll just stick with GA, right? So what we'll do is, if I want to just sort of balance this out a little bit, I'll change the tracking over here, right? So once again, we have the tracking, and we can just press a little up button here just to get some different sort of tracking ideas. This is going a bit slow for me, so I'm just going to click down here and maybe hit 50, 75, 100, 200, and 200 might work good. And we'll just kind of go from there, right? So that's probably good. Maybe a little bit higher. I might even type in 400. All right, so that's good. So if you have a lot of text on one side versus the other side, you may want to think about manipulating the tracking to see if you can't balance it out slightly. All right, so essentially with that done, we can make the outer sort of ring of dashed lines. So once again, we'll grab our ellipse tool. Oops. And I'll start in the center here, work my way out, hold down Alt and Shift to make a circle that goes just outside of those two circles there. And I'll take my fill off, put my stroke to black, and I'll change it to like 2 points or so, and then I'll click the stroke options here. The word stroke right there, and I'm just going to click over here where it says dashed line, and you're given the choice of what kind of, how big your dash is. In this case, it's measured in points, and this right here is also measured in points. So the dash and the gap can be put to different values. So let me just get a little closer here. All right, so I can kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So once again, my dash is 6 points long, and then my gap is 6 points wide. So if I wanted to like sort of increase the space between them, I could increase the space between them if I felt so inclined. If I wanted to make them closer together, I could pull it down a little bit. If I wanted to make the gaps a bit wider, I could make the dash a bit wider. If I wanted to alternate different widths of dashes, if I wanted to say I want a 6-point dash followed by a 3-point dash, and in between each one is going to be a 3-point gap. So I'll just do 3, 3, 3. We can see right here we've got a 3-point dash, a 3-point gap, a 3-point dash, a 6-point gap, right, and so on and so forth, right? And so it goes back and forth. So if you want to manipulate that and just find something that you like, you can. And if you want to place rounded caps on them, you can do that as well. I might make this a bit wider here, 4 points. 4 points here, so just a bit wider gap between each one. So at some point though, you may want to look at where your circle comes together, because at some points, sometimes the dashes and the gaps will run together, and you'll have one abnormally long dash where the two paths meet. So this is essentially the beginning and the ending point at the same time. So you want to maybe think about if you don't like that look. It's not a big deal though. All right, so I'm actually going to stick with what I had before. I'm going to have a 6-point dash and a 6-point gap. Again, this is up to you. All right. I'll have that be about even. Now the rounded cap makes it a bit occludes that a little bit, so I might make that just a slight bit bigger. All right, maybe even a little bit more. All right, so that's good. So I have a 6-point dash and an 8-point gap. Now, I'm just going to, oops, cancel. I'm just going to once again get my circle tool here, and I'm going to start in the center and say Alt. So oops, All right, get my circle tool here. Control click off. All right, start in the center, hold down Alt, hold down Shift, and I'm going to make it just a slightly bigger than the previous one here, and so it's automatically going to have the same dashes. Now, this circle's a bit bigger, so the dashes are going to go a little bit, are going to have a little bit different kind of order to them. So if you want to try to manipulate them to where it sort of alternates back and forth, you can try that. I might, let's see, I was having a hard time getting it just right, but I think you would make the dashes just a bit smaller and the gaps just a bit bigger to have that effect. If you wanted to make them the same size, you would obviously you make the dashes a bit bigger to kind of like, because they're covering more space. But really, it's up to you. If whatever look you're looking for when it comes to your sort of dashed lines here, I'm actually going to make these just a slight bit bigger. I'm going to see if I can. You want the space between these two lines and then the space between this line and your text to be about equal. So I'm going to hold down Shift and Alt and sort of, oops. Wow. Just a little bit here. Okay, that's good. All right, so I might try this. I'm actually going to make my circles a bit smaller. I'll pull these down into the center here, and then make my text a bit bigger. Now, this is going to take a couple steps here, so I'm going to get my text tool. I'm going to click on this text and make this just a slight bit bigger. And it's going to, I don't want it to go past the halfway point, though, so maybe 21 points is probably good. And then what I'll do is I'll need to take this circle here and expand this until it goes over the top here of this text. And then what we could do is we can take this text here and oops, let me get this text. So this text is now 21 points and this text should be 21 points here. So I'll just 21. All right, and so that way those things even up. And then I'll just do the same thing down here. I'll just take these two right here and I'll just shrink these down to match up the spaces between the lines. So we want to, once again, we want to have sort of, that's the Gestalt principles of grouping at work. You notice things that are a little bit off if like the gaps between them are a little bit off. That's probably good. Okay, good. All right, so as far as the star goes, the star tool is interesting because they have a default sort of angled star here. So if you just get your star tool and you start in the center and you work your way out, first off, you'll notice that you have to hold down Shift to get a star that's standing upright. If you don't hold down Shift, it's going to be hard to get it directly on its sort of bottom 2 points. It's going to be on its side slightly, right? We don't want it on its side. So we want it to start in the center and hold down Shift as we do this. Now, my star has this sort of flat edges on the top. All the arms sort of meet each other, but your star probably looks like this, like kind of a chunky star here. Let me see if I can get the fill on and the stroke off for now. All right, so you probably have a star that looks a bit like this, sort of a chunky sort of fat star that has a more obtuse angle here than what we've got going on here, right? So maybe a less obtuse angle. Anyways, the idea is if you want to change the way that these arms work, is you hold down Shift. Let me just get rid of these real quick. Obviously you'll hold down Shift while you make your star, and you'll size your star to like where you want the points to be. Now, once you have that point done, then with Shift and the mouse button still held down, so this right here, this is as big as I want to make the star, right? And I'm gonna press down the Control button, the CTRL button below the Shift button. And then once I do that, as I pull out, it's going to lengthen the arms of the star and keep the inner corners the same. So it'll make those points a bit more narrow. All right, so that's about what I want there. So I'm gonna just select everything here, and I'm gonna make sure that everything is centered. All right, so everything's about centered now. Sometimes this star shape I've noticed doesn't look quite centered, even though its center is in the center of everything. It still looks like it's closer to this little point down here, just because the points here are, just like a little further out. But so I might just move this up a little bit here. Hold down Shift just to kind of get more centered. All right, so I added this little flourish here, this little line. Now it's hard to exactly get. Just by resizing it, it's hard to get the ratios right to have like the same distance between each line here. So what we do to get that done is we go to Object Path, and then Offset Path. And if I wanted to preview how this looks, you can see the difference between the two. I want this just spaced off just a little bit here. So I'm going to have this is about right. But what I did here, I had this at 3 pixels, so I put 3px, and then I just press tab, and I can see the preview here. So this is before and after. And if you want it to be a little bit less, you can say like maybe 2px. Something like that, right? Maybe a little bit smaller, because I'm going to put a stroke on this. And once you do that, press OK, and then you have this new shape that's kind of hanging out here, right? So what we'll do is we'll just add a stroke. I'll take this fill off, and I'll put this stroke on. Maybe 2 points here. With the fill like red, so you can kind of see what's going on here. So we have this stroke over this this offset path here, right? So we've got these 2 paths here. All right, so with that done, what I'll do is I'll take my fill off, and I'll move this out of the way. Right, okay, let me start this over here. Did something wrong. All right, so try it again here. Object, expand, oh, wait, no. Object, path, offset path, and then we'll just, I'll do this 3 pixels here. 3px, try it again here, and then I'll put a stroke on, maybe like a red stroke here, make it a bit bigger, and then I'll have the stroke be on the outside, as it were. And then what we'll do is we'll take the fill off, and then we have this little outline of the star here. I'm going to take my stroke. I'm going to make my stroke have a rounded corner just to make it a little less harsh. And I'm going to select both of these shapes here, just make them a bit smaller, just to get them away from the edges. That's probably good. Okay. So with both of them, I think the star in the middle is blue. So I'm going to make them both. I'm going to make the fill here blue for this inner star here, this dark blue right there, and I'll make this stroke here a dark blue. Right. Okay, so with that done, I'll just affect my text here. I'll just make my text red. I'll select both of these, and I'll make it. Let's look here. All right, I'll just the fill, and I'll make it this dark red shade here. Now, the last thing we want is a sort of a little established 2014 or whatever sort of other info that you want to be put on there. So I'm gonna just what did I use here? I think I used. Bickham script is what I used here. So I'm going to find that. I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to find Bickham script. All right, and I'll take the tracking back down to 0, and I'll put the EST period, which is the established, and I'll just Alt drag that to the other side here, and I'll just put in 2014, and I'm going to make this both a bit bigger here. Let me just click on both of these. All right, so because they're just big enough to be seen. So I'll just put these down here, side by side. And if you want to center them a bit better, you can just Control G and group them, and then align to a key object and have them aligned by the star and just center them like this. Oops, no, undo that. Like that. Align to key object, hit the star, and then center. There you go. All right, so now they're centered. All right, and so this is just a basic logo on how you create, the basic ideas on how you can create various different elements to a circular logo design. Now, obviously, if you want to put different text here and there and here as well, if you want to put, hey, say for instance, a different kind of shape in the middle, you can do that as well. But let's stick to things that we design ourselves. And I would say that in this case, you may want to stick to something simple and something more solid, since we have so many lines around here. We don't want too many lines kind of hanging out. So balanced. All right, so let's go ahead and just export this as a PNG. And I'll just make it 2 times, and I'll just export this artboard. Let me see. I'll name it Ace Logo, last name, and then we'll just export this, right? And so you can kind of see what we're looking at once we open it up. Some 2x, Ace Logo, right? And so there we go. All right, so this is what we got. So we can put this on any background we want here. All right, well, very cool. All right, well, cannot wait to see you guys produce, and have fun with it. See you in class.